Treyarch is probably the most consistent COD developer in the lineup. Their games usually aren't as ambitious or realistic as Infinity Ward's. Well, I take that back, Black Ops 3 was definitely ambitious, but they stick to a winning formula. They don't stray too far from what you want. From COD 3 to Black Ops Cold War, Treyarch has designed a ton of multiplayer maps. Today, well, we're going to look at the bottom of the barrel. We did this for the Sledgehammer maps, and you guys really seem to enjoy it. What's up, everybody? Chaos here. Today, I'm going to update my list of the 10 absolute worst Treyarch maps in COD history, DLC maps included. So you be sure to let me know which of these was your least favorite. Drop a like, and let's start off with Armada Strike and Black Ops Cold War, a recent one. Now, it was a solid map for Combined Arms, and it gave the game as a whole a little extra flavor. However, the shrunken down 6v6 Strike version, widely hated by the community, has to be one of the least played maps in the entire game. Armada is made up of big warships, as you would think. You could hop on speedboats, zip lines, traverse between them, but Armada Strike, it was shortened down with none of the cool mobility, and it really feels like it's only in the game to help boost the map count to something higher. Some of the Strike maps are alright, but Strike, or Armada Strike that is the opposite. It's one of the worst Treyarch maps in COD history if you ask me, and on one hand, I don't blame them. I mean, Cold War was thrown together in just a fraction of a normal development time for a full-fledged COD game. They had to cut some corners by reusing the larger maps for 6v6, but this one didn't work out. Armada looks great. It plays great in Combined Arms, but the 6v6 Strike version, no. Before we move on, guys, guess what? I am live streaming again, but it's not actually what you think. I am live over on Whatnot every single week with the Chaos Comics business. We are selling all kinds of cool comics. We are going to do action figures, toys, collectibles. We have a huge comic mystery bag at live auction going Tuesday. It's me running them. So if you guys are interested in that, I'll put a link in the description. Make sure you follow me over on Whatnot and click the link so you can get $10 off your first purchase if you decide to join. At number 9 is Hacienda Twilight. I like the way that sounds. Hacienda Twilight, Black Ops 4. It was a decent map, Hacienda was, but when Treyarch decided experimenting with weather variants was cool, it fell apart. Remember back in BO4 when Treyarch started releasing rainstorm versions of maps or nighttime versions? Some of them were actually cool. Firing Range Night was pretty cool, but Hacienda Twilight, it was pretty much widely hated by the community. Now, the map itself was fine. The visibility was turned way down, and since a lot of this map was already indoors, this meant sitting in the shadows was a more powerful strategy than ever before. If you plopped yourself down in a corner in certain spots of the map, it was literally impossible to see you from certain distances, so naturally, that became the dominant strategy. It wasn't as bad as a certain other Black Ops 4 weather variant, which we'll talk about later, but this was not a high point for Treyarch. Crysis in Black Ops 1. Let's go all the way back. It pains me to put any map from the original Black Ops on a list like this, but I have to be true to myself. Crysis wasn't good. Yes, the visuals were iconic, and the shrunken down gun game version of it was pretty fun, but the standard 6v6, too much space. It was like 3 maps stitched together into one, and it hurt the flow big time. You had the beachside part, the cave part, the secret base part that nobody went in, and then the village part where most of the combat took place. If you spawned in the village part, you were probably having a pretty good time, but if you spawned anywhere else, you were going to waste a full minute or more to get your life back just to get to the fighting, assuming you didn't get picked off on the way there, in which case, do it all over again. Crysis certainly stands out for its visual style, but when it comes to gameplay, most people avoided it. Speaking of avoided, Metro in Black Ops 3. And speaking of standing out visually, it's one of my least favorite maps in any Jetpack Call of Duty game. Set in a futuristic train station, very large map, lots of overhead cover, which made it really obnoxious to shoot down UAVs. Most people remember this map for the train. It would come every once in a while and bring fighting to a complete standstill, while other people remember it for the big open courtyard on one side of the center building where you could just get picked off over and over again. I guess at the end of the day, Metro could have been a lot worse, and the actual layout of the map itself wasn't horrible, but something about the way it played and where the spawns were located made it hard to enjoy. If there's one BO3 map that really stood out for being bad to me, it's this one. Miami and Black Ops Cold War. I remember when we first saw this map. It was a hype moment, but once we played on it, we weren't hyped anymore. It's a stunning map, one of the best looking maps out there. The lighting effects and reflections and streets and details are amazing. It nails the aesthetic that Black Ops Cold War was going for, but the game flow was something else, not in a good way. There was just too much going on. It felt more like a campaign level than a multiplayer map. There were too many rooms and hallways and buildings and alleyways to weave in and out, and that also gave the campers way too many spots to hunker down and kill the game flow even more. Playing well on Miami meant you had to somehow predict where everybody was going to be at all times, and it wasn't possible. Now, I used to think this map was overhated, but now that I've had some time to step back and look at everything else Treyarch has made, I think it was justified. It's not a good map. Very pretty, very detailed, not very fun. At number 5, Garrison and Black Ops Cold War. It was a close one, and looking through the community's post on Twitter and Reddit regarding the game, Miami and Garrison were neck and neck in terms of being the most disliked. Meant to be some kind of joint military base or training exercise or something. Most people just remember this as the tank map, and it's not very good. Now, honestly, I don't know what to say about the map because I barely played it during the short time that I played Cold War, but the community, they didn't like it. Looking at the overhead layout, I'm not really sure what Treyarch was going for. It's this weirdly claustrophobic map, and it looks like it really only has one lane. I mean, most Treyarch maps have 3 lanes, but Garrison looks like it has 1, maybe 2 if you're creative, and it feels like you're playing it that way. The flow was tough to get the hang of because you constantly ran into people. It felt like you were constantly spawning in, running forward, and bumping into the enemy. Drone in Black Ops 2, and do not argue with me in the comment section and say it was good. Despite Black Ops 2's fantastic reputation, there's some maps that were not good on day one. Drone is one of the most hated Treyarch maps of all time, not just because it was bad, but also because it was such a stark contrast compared to the rest of the map selection in the game. It took place in an admittedly cool factory, but the long sniping sites and the abundance of camping spots made that flow terrible for anything but search and destroy, and even that was up for debate. Drone fit with the visual style of Black Ops 2. It's iconic in its own way, but nobody ever voted for it. It wasn't the absolute worst map in the game, but it was second worst. If you know your COD history, you probably already know which map was worse than Drone, but you're going to have to wait a couple minutes to think about it before we get there. Madagascar in Black Ops 4. Now, if you were playing Black Ops 4 back in the day, you probably remember all the drama surrounding this. First, there was the whole Black Ops Pass fiasco. Then there was a severe content drought after the game initially launched. Madagascar was the first multiplayer to be added to the game nearly 2 months after launch, and at that time, it was thrown into the mix. It was bad. Seriously, I have no idea who actually designed it, but it didn't work. It doesn't have lanes. It doesn't have battle lines. It doesn't have any kind of game flow. Instead, it's basically just a big chunk of desert with a bunch of random rocks and set pieces that's used for cover. The flow was abysmal. The combat felt completely random because you literally had no idea where anybody was coming from or going from or what to expect. And again, we waited 2 months for it. At number 2, Aftermath in Black Ops 2. Never before has a Treyarch map been so confusing. It felt like something cut from Modern Warfare 3 or Ghost due to the intricate design and the busted building design. But when I say intricate, I don't mean it in a good way. There was just way too much going on. It isn't that big of a map, but it felt gigantic because it felt like every lane was connected to every other lane in 3 to 4 different ways, and that destroyed the game flow. There were so many passageways and alleys and hallways, it made it impossible to predict where anybody was going to be, and that's assuming you weren't just sitting in the middle with your teammates and spawn trapping the enemy players. In a game as good as Black Ops 2, Aftermath was a huge sore spot. Some people have suggested Aftermath was just a bad map in comparison to everything else. I disagree. It was a bad map all the way around, but I'm willing to forgive it because of how good everything else was in the game. At number 1, Arsenal Sandstorm Black Ops 4, the only map in COD history to be completely removed from the game because it was terrible. Launch map for Black Ops 4, and while it wasn't most beloved, it wasn't bad. However, Treyarch eventually added in the new version called Arsenal Sandstorm, which was the exact same map, but with a giant sandstorm going that limited your visibility. Yeah, because of the strict spawn logic and the lack of visibility, there was now, one singular way to play the map: thermal LMGs. Arsenal Sandstorm was pretty much unplayable without a thermal sight, and with the layout being so simple and predictable, it made the game flow arguably the worst of any Treyarch game ever made, and that's tough. A few months after adding the map, Treyarch just quietly yanked it back out. No official explanation, but we know why. Everybody hated it. So you may think maps like Drone and Aftermath sucked, but at least they weren't as bad, or that bad, so bad that Treyarch had to delete them from the game. There you have it, my friends. Let me know one Treyarch map that deserved to make the list that didn't. I'll see you soon.